Good evening and thank you for joining us for our Year in Review 2020. I'm Helen Seah. Join me as we look back at the year that was.
Yes, it's that time of the year already. Every end comes with an opportunity to look back and reflect. I'm Kilawani. Join me later in the program for a review of sports in 2020.
The global COVID-19 pandemic has been the hot topic of discussion for the year 2020, with the crisis shaking the world socially, economically and politically. The pandemic forcing one of the most difficult years in the world's history, claiming over 1 million lives worldwide and more than 70 million confirmed COVID-19 cases by the end of the year. Beginning in China in January, the coronavirus spread rapidly to neighboring continents and eventually reached Papua New Guinea, which was categorized in the Western Pacific region in the month of March. And despite early predictions of a major outbreak, PNG was not affected as badly as expected, with just over 700 confirmed cases, less than 10 deaths and over 600 recovering. Strict restrictions, however, were put in place to contain the spread of the virus.
The COVID-19 pandemic shook the world, and the world economy went through one of its toughest times in history.
This is the defining global health crisis of our time. The days, weeks, and months ahead will be a test of our resolve.
Today, I am officially declaring a national emergency.
Now is the time for everyone to stop non-essential contact with others.
Even before the pandemic reached Papua New Guinea, with confirmation of the first case on March 20, business and livelihoods were gradually being affected. After initial confirmed cases were established, international border restrictions were quickly put in place by authorities, and the first lockdown period began, as well as declaration of a state of emergency.
Sick through and may come finish inside long Papua New Guinea. You may establish him finish first case. I may go out finish, but you may not clear one I'm happy and lose him. Imprint plus see corona. And as you may start long map him na look, you may clear walk yet, lot is the first case. Susa long East New Britain, time may play pick him or some area of interest or person of interest. Test the confirm him case in plus sick. Today as me talk, second person of East New Britain who said I walk one time.
Following a bit of easing in the tension of the situation, and with some famous world leaders, including UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Prince Charles also catching the virus, the confirmation of a new case at Marabe House, where Prime Minister James Marabe and other authority figures were giving daily briefings and updates through the media, caused another scare, especially for those in NCD, given that it was a new virus that had no cure. The government eventually imposed a second lockdown as a result, affecting supply chains in the business arena and restricting movement of people and public transport heavily. Church worship services were cancelled, schools shut down, and information sharing about COVID-19 through the internet and other channels of communication flooded the airwaves. With the state of emergency finally lifted, Parliament passed a bill to have the National Pandemic Act 2020 in place. The new act came as a relief for many people, but eventually many questioned its legality as well as its relevance and practicality. It was eventually acknowledged that people will have to adapt to a new normal, knowing that the virus will always be there until vaccines are available for it. Everyone was strongly encouraged to adhere to health protocols put in place for prevention against COVID-19. This provided some hope for the PNG population, enabling a cooling down of the tense situation, with major restrictions slowly being lifted, even though case numbers continued to rise throughout the country, with a few deaths recorded. So although PNG was not affected as severely as expected from a health perspective, the effects on the country's economy were great and would last into the next year. Economists like Bank South Pacific CEO Robin Fleming had predicted prior to the virus reaching PNG during interviews with EMTV that it would have enormous effects on PNG's economy, in specific sectors like tourism and hospitality, and it did happen.
The coronavirus, in terms of direct impact on individuals, was unfortunately a large number of people have passed away and died as a result of it, has created a lot of impact on the free movement of people between countries. Free movement initially was people out of China, but that's quickly spread to people out of other countries. If you're an individual, you have an unexpected expense. What reserves do you have to meet that unexpected expense? Is it savings or something else? And the same applies with government and businesses will find that the number of people coming into PNG is less because of travel restrictions, which will have an impact on Air Niugini, no doubt have an impact on hotels.
According to the Labour Department, over 10,000 jobs were lost during the pandemic in PNG. During the course of the pandemic this year, many people questioned the reliability of the testing results and whether the people identified have actually been infected by the novel coronavirus. Pressure mounted upon the Marabe government as issues relating to this, as well as funding allocation for the COVID-19 crisis, surfaced. However, the fight against COVID-19 continued with assistance from both within PNG and overseas to help PNG's response. The pandemic came as a wake-up call for PNG, with even the Prime Minister admitting to it. It was a major test for the country's struggling health system as well as its economy.
While 2020 has certainly been a year of challenges, it will go down in the country's history as the year the PNGDF's Kumul 417 was deployed to Australia to provide humanitarian aid. This followed the Australian bushfires, which engulfed parts of Australia, destroying thousands of communities. The 100 soldiers who were deployed spent weeks assisting to rebuild some of these communities in Victoria. This was also the first time soldiers were deployed to Australia, PNG's big brother in the Pacific, and always the first to respond to major disasters in the country.
The 12th of January 2020 marked the beginning of this historical deployment. 76 soldiers from PNGDF's Engineering Battalion in Lays Egam Barracks boarded the Australian Air Force Hercules C-130 at Nadzap, bound for Port Moresby. They formed the majority of the Kumul 417 contingent that would be deployed to Australia to provide bushfire relief assistance. On the 13th, the soldiers from Egam, including 26 from Taurama and Murray Barracks, were farewelled at the PNGDF Air Traffic Wing by Prime Minister James Marabe and other senior government officials. With Australia always being the first to respond to PNG in time of need, deploying soldiers to assist with bushfire relief efforts was a way to show appreciation.
But more importantly for yourself and for the institution that you represent, bring back the capacity that you would have built in your engagement period. You bring it back for future similar deployments, both domestically and externally, as you serve your country as soldiers. And I look forward to welcoming you back home. Truly, having served your country, representing your people, you would have helped restore Australia in the smallest way we can do as members of PNG Defence Force, representing the 8 to 10 million people we have in our country.
Towards the end of 2019, Australia experienced a series of bushfires that burned through 19 million hectares of land, destroying flora, fauna and thousands of communities, with reported deaths as well. In response, Prime Minister James Marape pledged support by way of sending soldiers for the bushfire assist. The PNGDF soldiers were engaged with the engineers from the Australian Army's 3rd Brigade, rebuilding communities affected by the bushfires in Victoria. These pictures taken from the 3rd Brigade Australian Army Facebook page show the work undertaken, clearing fallen trees, building bridges and restoring access to areas cut off during the bushfires.
The start, it was a bit of a slow start, but as the momentum picked up, we sort of blend in and as we went along the way, we learned from the ADF, and they also learned from us. We shared ideas, and it was a combined effort, and we managed to achieve all the tasks that was delegated to us.
The Comal Force 17 deployment goes down in PNG history as the second largest deployment since Comal Force 1 was sent to Vanuatu in the 1980s. This was also the first largest deployment for the Engineering Battalion. When they returned to Port Moresby, they were welcomed by then Deputy Prime Minister Davis Stephen.
It is therefore essential that we understand and learn from the global security environment, learn from this kind of deployment in response to natural disasters, so that in peace times we should design our own security policy and strategies to respond when we are next faced with challenges. Armies of nations today must prepare not just for wars, but prepare well enough for natural disasters.
For the 76 soldiers who proceeded to Lae, they were welcomed by Marabe Governor Ginson Saonu, Australian Consul General in Lae Paul Murphy, and the Engineering Battalion's commanding officer Lieutenant Colonel Bruno Malau at the Nadzab Airport. An even bigger welcome awaited them at the Egam Barracks gate upon their arrival, where they were welcomed by their families, colleagues and the community.
Papua New Guinea reported its biggest cocaine bust this year. However, existing laws do not allow careful procession of those alleged to be involved. An Australian pilot, an Italian captain and 3 PNG men were implicated in this attempt to smuggle close to 600 kilograms of cocaine into Australia. Though they were arrested, charged and went to court, no further arrests were made. Authorities cannot explain how the drugs came through without detection.
In July, the topic on PNG becoming a transit point for cocaine smuggling was heated with discussions on all forms of media. As Spare Police reports, a light aircraft flown in by 52-year-old Australian pilot David Cutmore landed at an unauthorized location near Papalea in the Central Province. After loading the illicit drugs nicknamed Kambang, the plane failed to take off and crash landed. News of the accident sparked numerous questions on the illicit trade, questions that remained unanswered today.
Australia has already commenced these investigations 2 years back. It should afford some evidence of smuggling from PNG into Australia. But from information that we are still working on, Papua New Guinea has been visited by Australian nationals who are part of the syndicate. Interest may have been the one at Milne Bay, Budi. From intelligence, Australians have visited PNG to gain access to Budi. And in their endeavor to get to Budi, they came through Port Moresby and went by Kupiano to get to Milne Bay, and that's where they hooked up the Papua New Guinean at Kupiano. So they tied him into that network because they had an encrypted phone and he was using one, and it is through that medium that the yacht set sail from Peru in South America to come all the way to Kupiano. And out in the waters, the guy from Kupiano went out and met them, unloaded the cargo onto the boat back to Kupiano, and through his connections, shifted the cargo from Kupiano to Papalea in preparation for it to be smuggled.
Police Commissioner David Manning did praise police in NCD who recovered some of the illicit drugs worth over 200 million kina. However, that vital evidence was flown to Australia to be used as exhibits in court. Opposition leader Beldanama says there is more to the cocaine incident than what is being released to the media.
And it is very worrying in the manner in which the Prime Minister has been mute, the Police Minister has been mute, if not given misleading and unfounded statements, praising the Australians and nothing about what Papua New Guinea is doing.
5 men were charged for their alleged involvement under the Customs Act and have undergone committal proceedings. They include 2 expatriates, pilot John Catmull and Italian Carlos Antanasio, who is the owner of MV Badu, where police believe shipped the drugs into PNG. 36-year-old Shane Dikana from Central, 35-year-old Dominic Telauki from the autonomous region of Bougainville, and 35-year-old Morgan Mogu from Central Province. They were all charged with smuggling of illicit drugs under the Customs Act. However, as of the last court hearing, the Waigani Committal Courts dismissed charges under the Customs and Pandemic Act against the 5 accused, saying that there are no proper laws in place to charge offenders in illicit trade. Catmull is now being prosecuted under aviation laws.
As Papua New Guinea was coming to terms with coronavirus and its threat to human life at the beginning of 2020, an existing threat sprung into the spotlight when a young woman was left dead, allegedly by her husband. 19-year-old Jeneline Kennedy's death erupted dormant voices of people all across the country, demanding more attention to domestic violence and gender-based violence as a whole. It became a war of the sexes, the rich and the poor, divided views, but one thing for sure, it created a wave.
The country woke up on the 24th of June with horrifying news. Firstly on social media that a young woman was left to die at the emergency ward of the Port Moresby General Hospital. Her lifeless body lay battered and bruised, the suspect her husband. Staff at the hospital were even full of grief, offering a minute of silence. Like many intimate partner violence deaths, it could have gone unnoticed if the Chief of Emergency Medicine, Dr. Sam Yokopua, hadn't posted about it. This post caught the attention of the media and the public, demanding an immediate investigation and pushing the family to seek justice for their daughter. Horrifying accounts were told of the life she once lived.
Baby, I'm sadly old baby crying, but okay, me carry old baby and I go. Bolo some lab. Lilik boy blame cry him. And fight him, Lilik boy and wood threat now. And fight him me too. Fight me and give black eye. And to no can me less larry or baby cry him to. And continue every sometime I also go around good. Come go inside the room now. Avenue go night time so fight him mere cholemba. Chainy mem, lock him mem, 5 plus chain and put him. Chainy mem finish now, lock him. Stick tape, mouse them, and shoot him want them. Pliers want them, and school driver, no knife, himself, fighty him.
Her death created never-ending discussions, the battle of sexes and divided views. But one thing was for certain, her death created a wave. Through her death, women and men all stood up, proclaiming enough is enough. Women cannot continue to suffer like this.
You can put in domestic violence backside. You can put in gender violence backside. Gender-based violence, put in the backside. You can put in the forefront of decision making.
It must be a U-turn from now onwards. It must be a U-turn.
So you mean now you miss an affair? All we want is the government of the day walking something straight.
And those all Marty Mary Penis nor Kilimolia, they deserve that.
Through these pleas and tears and questions being raised, it was evident that PNG has some of the toughest laws in place, but enforcement is the problem.
No to compensation. No to one-talk system. No to taking cover under the shade of customary and traditional obligations. For violence, bigot violence, and violence must be subdued by proper dispensation of justice.
Last month, I was informed that 647 cases were recorded for domestic violence. While we are talking about one, this is just 647 cases in 1 month in Port Moresby. One can only imagine how many cases are unreported or throughout the country.
The young mother's death also put on the spotlight the services that are available to women who are in similar situations. More awareness is needed to inform women and children of the services that are available to help them and how they can seek these services.
Most of the women lack the knowledge of knowing the services available around them and having the fear that they might not get that support. But we are all here to provide that support.
Health Fund PNG is an international organisation working in Papua New Guinea, and one of our key commitment areas is addressing violence against children and their families, particularly women and mothers. And we've been involved in this area of work for quite some time globally and here. And our interest then is actually creating an environment that is positive for children to grow and thrive.
Jeneline's death created a wave that led to a momentum of discussions leading to the hosting of the first ever national summit on gender-based violence with the theme, "Now is the time, united for equality." The national summit was the initiative of 20 members of parliament aimed at paying closer attention to gender-based violence, domestic violence, sorcery-related violence and any forms of violence in all the provinces. As this young mother of two rests peacefully at the 9 Mile Cemetery, her story has just begun. As her family continues to pursue justice for her death, the country takes a step forward, acknowledging gender-based violence as a serious threat to innocent lives.
Welcome back. It has been a turbulent year for the new entity tasked with bringing order to the chaos within the municipal services in Lae City. The Lae City Authority has taken over financial powers and is working to improve services in Lae City. But it has not been easy. CEO Neil Ellery was issued death threats as the administration tried to fix years of accumulated problems.
Since the creation of the Lae City Authority, the administration has been fighting an uphill battle to bring the high levels of abuse within the Lae City Council under control. Payment systems and much of the financial powers have been brought under the control of the authority. However, the resistance from the old guard in the council remained largely unabated. In July, the chief executive of the Lae City Authority received death threats. A formal request was made to the Lae Police to investigate the threats.
I will not be intimidated, my staff will not be intimidated, and I am here to finish my job off.
The threats were sent by text message. The sender told LCA Chief Executive Neil Ellery that he would be shot and that they knew where he lived.
If these sorts of threats are coming through, it means I'm doing my job. It means I'm affecting the corrupt Kaikoman right at the core now. We have closed off every angle that they can possibly steal money or anything from the council, and we're making sure that the services will be delivered back into the city.
Since taking office as the interim CEO of the Lae City Authority, Neil Ellery and his staff were physically threatened several times. Much of the dissatisfaction was triggered by his efforts to transfer administrative, financial and municipal functions from the Lae City Council and to rid the organization of widespread corruption. In 2018, the Lae City Authority took control of the Lae Market. Police were called in to remove several casual staff, as well as their former management who never accounted for revenue generated over 20 years from the market. And the threats were strongly condemned by an irate Lae MP, John Rosso. In 2017, investigations showed how millions of kina were stolen by corrupt officials within the Lae City Council, and the spendings included hire cars, funeral costs and ghost names on the payroll.
While a lot of work has been done this year, there's still a long way to go in rebuilding Ley City and restoring proper processes.
The 30-year-old Porgera gold mine dominated much of the headlines in 2020 due to the expired special mining lease of former operator Barrick New Guinea Limited. The national government, Barrick New Guinea Limited and landowners, parties in the negotiation, remained defiant on their demands for the reopening of the gold mine. Thousands of employees lost their jobs, but Prime Minister James Marabe is adamant that the country gets a better deal in line with the Take Back PNG slogan. And while negotiations continue into the new year, the landowners who live in the Porgera Valley face their own challenges. Here's a look back.
In August 2019, the special mining lease for Porgera mine with the operator Barrick New Guinea Limited expired. 2 years before that, Barrick New Guinea Limited had applied for an extension of the SML for another 20 years.
And we never once got warned or suggested we wouldn't renew the mining lease. As I pointed out, we jointly with government approached the courts to recognize our right to continue to operate. And so, when you go through that, nearly 9 months later, to suddenly wake up one morning and decide that everyone's got to leave.
In February this year, the Mining Advisory Committee recommending to NEC that the extension be cancelled.
Some of those fundamental or foundational conditions in the mining development contract were left unfulfilled, especially in as far as agreements with provincial government, agreement with landowners, and agreement with our national government on behalf of the country. For instance, and from my top of my head, resettlement issue, as I did mention in Parliament today, resettlement of landowners from the affected area, and many of the ongoing issues like the environmental issues.
This week, the court dismissing the court proceeding filed by Barrick on the cancellation of the extension and found that Barrick had abused court process. Deputy Justice Ambang Kandakasi stating that the Mineral Resource Enga had not been consulted as a shareholder before Barrick New Guinea Limited had applied for the SML. Barrick, in a media statement, said they would continue to challenge the decision in court, stating that the dismissal process was not based on the substantive grounds advanced by BNL in its application for judicial review. In Parliament this week, Prime Minister James Marabe coming under fire after announcing the handing over of the SML to Kumo Minerals Holding Limited.
When will the landowners be consulted? My fourth question. As Barrick fulfill all the obligation in the last contract?
Member of Yellow Pange, let me talk, come up long. Newspaper Teteos and let me form him Kumul Mineral Holdings Limited. Let me talk, let me clear to Mas long. State law Kumul Holdings Limited or some black company, no got capacity.
Kumul Minerals Holdings is technically not as the financial capacity to undertake a operation like Porgera because of past investments in Tolukuma, in Nautilus mining, which has drained out most of the financial capacity of that particular institution.
Was KMHL ever issued the environmental permit prior to the issuance of the special mining lease? If not, then Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am seen as taking a shortcut from Tari to Porgera and not following the real road.
Very soon by announcing full board Kumul Mineral Holdings. Now very soon by subsidiary display Enga provincial government landowners na Kumul Mineral Basinaun, and we will engage with all proper grounds.
But while all of the signing ceremony and court proceedings played out in Port Moresby, behind the scene, divided landowner groups started surfacing.
Me, Mr. Losa Crown, you not looking below Mosby, you not looking below one plab. Mr. Lopogra, na me place me kulapi, na me bossy mouse road. Access bagunche tem barik to so car blo barik by and out. Sign blo barik stop logo blo barik by and out. Igo ina government is set tolims la lendonas association issue pastem.
While each subclans have their own disagreement on how landowners benefited from the 2.5% equity share and 2% royalty over the 30 years, it has caused a division in the subclans that make up the directors of the landowner company Porgera Mine Limited. The two most notable brothers who have been in the headlines is former Porgera MP Nixon Mangape and his younger brother Maso Mangape, who is currently the general manager for IPI Group of Companies, a company that came about to participate in the mining boom. Maso, who is also currently the chairman of Porgera Landowners Association.
Last 30 years you work here, you save money loan, you buy kaigana. Why did not you save stuff loan? Field break now. Kitchen long live here. Last 3 months, that's all you, Maloloya. You were standby. Now relax. So what's better give him 20 kina to you? Pumulong minute by giving you 30 kina. Just relax.
There's been no consultation. We understand the government's got the authority here. But the constitutional right that the landowners we have is not been accorded to us to express ourselves.
Meanwhile, in the Porgera Valley, villagers that surround the mine site who were supposed to be resettled in the initial SML questioned when the Marabe Stephen government will address them.
So I mean, people are facing big problems right now. Please, government, you take over on Jila mine. You come talk sablo mibla. Are big now. People starting to last mugare. And to all mibla, as well people you got need on Jila. Please, government, you come Arab now talk sablo mibla.
In the valley, many are confused on how landowners were left out in the granting of the SML to Kumul Minerals Holding Limited. Mineral Resource Authority Managing Director Jerry Gary explains how mining amendments passed in June this year allowed for the government to grant the SML to Kumul Minerals Holding Limited without following previous procedures.
The consultation process under Section 3 of the Act has been amended to add a clause in there to say that a state applicant may apply or may conduct consultation after the grant of SML. So under that provision and also other provisions which also waiver a state applicant from mining development contract negotiations, environmental permit and other permits, other agreements, so that once the permit is granted, then thereafter, after the commercial arrangements are in order and the mine recommence, they would like to re-engage on other the permits and other agreements so that the mine could open as swiftly as possible.
Also said there's a huge talent, a reservoir of talent in Papua New Guinea in the mining industry today. There are literally thousands of Papua New Guineans with outstanding skills and knowledge about mining. But the ability sits here in this country to keep on developing the resources that the country's been blessed with.
How and whether the PNG government can, a question PM says is an offence to the country's national sovereignty.
And people do question state that state have capacity to reopen the mine. Come on, are you questioning the sovereignty of a sovereign state? State resource is endless. State can't do anything to get money to reopen Porgera.
The Wafi Golpu mining project came to a halt this year over the debates between the national government and the Marabe provincial government on the type of method used to dump mine waste. This disagreement signified the national government's hope to save the country's dying economy, while the Marabe provincial government wants to protect the Huon Gulf seas and Marabe's coastal communities from deep-sea tailings.
The Marabe provincial government stand on DSTP this year was for SEPA and the mining company to select another tailings disposal method before developing the Wafi Golpu mine. The MPG's position was influenced by a public outcry by Morabians for Wafi Golpu not to dump its tailings into the Huon Gulf Sea. Awareness campaigns were then initiated under the theme No to DSTP, Yes to Wafi Golpu. The Evangelical Lutheran Church headed these campaigns. They were conducted by youth through cleanathons around Lay City, free print service on T-shirts, and a Facebook page to drive the debate further. The underlying message of the Lutheran Church was to protect the environment and livelihood of the people.
As church, we cannot allow any form of development that bring disruption.
Marabe Governor Ginsen Saunu took the debate to Parliament in September this year, where he questioned Environment Minister Wera Mori on other waste disposal methods.
The best way to approach in order to develop Wafi mine, do different approach or approach differently from the mining business we do in Papua New Guinea. And I've been too vocal about it. And today, this moment, or this minute, is a happy moment for me. And therefore, I would like to take this time to thank the Prime Minister Prime Minister and his two ministers, Minister for Mining and Minister for SEPA, to give ample time for us to make our presentation through the normal process of discussion. And we have come this far, and I'm satisfied that we can't go on talking forever like this. At least we must stop at some point and do some action. And this is the beginning of all that is to come. So I would like to thank the Prime Minister, his two ministers, and the department involved, like the MRA and the SEPA, CEO, and all the relevant government departments who are involved in Wafi mine discussions.
The Environment Minister responded by supporting the mining company's environment impact statement while ruling out the possibility of a tailings dam by drawing reference to the collapse of the Oktedi tailings dam in the 1980s.
Discussions have eventuated, and I'd like to thank the Prime Minister for his patience, and of course the people of Marabe under the sterling leadership of their dynamic governor in the Honorable Ginsen Soanu. The people of Marabe's views and concerns had been heard. And I am thankful that at this juncture of the signing, what will happen now is in the next processes, their concerns and issues have raised will be discussed in the public forum during the mine development contract discussions, the forum that is going to basically proceed towards the signing of the special mining lease. And so I'm just so thankful that that processes and the leadership that is displayed by the Prime Minister would like to see that we not only talk, but we must walk the talk.
This tug of war between the MPG and SEPA was concluded in a DSTP consultation forum in October in Ley. The forum was upon the request of the MPG to allow researchers to present their reports on other alternatives to dispose of tailings from the mine. It was concluded with an announcement from the Environment Minister that a working committee will be established to review all the reports made during the forum. Mr. Morris said the next course of action would follow the reviewing exercise. Meanwhile, members of all the districts in Marabe except Bulolo MP Sam Basil have taken a back seat in this year's debate on DSTP. Basil also disagreed with the tailings dam.
I do have a tailings dam up in Hidden Valley, and I have an issue there with the tailings dam as well. There's none of the dam or the tailings disposal will be clean and good.
Talks of mining sand also surfaced in October this year. Members of communities along the north coast of Madang say it is dividing families with factions in support of the proposed project. A public forum was held to gauge the views of the locals with the help and advice of former Chief Justice and former Madang Governor Sir Arnold Ahmet. It appears Papua New Guinea lacks specific laws on sand mining, and the legal void opens up opportunities for abuse.
Sarang village along the north coast of Madang sits along a narrow strip of sandy beach. And just last month they were told that their beach has been included in a proposal by a Singaporean company that wants to mine sand. For the older people here, it's a bad idea.
One kind of some coconuts, you sell him, you go on inside there, sell stuff. I mean, you're selling everything on the sun up.
When work ball make him, when something by come up, good plan, no good, me plan no, so when something.
Last month, the Mineral Resources Authority held a series of mining warden hearings to gauge the people's views on whether sand mining should happen.
Me plan community belong here, me plan. You don't like him this plan too, and because something when me plan against him too, na me plan start. You look at this last, what's on. Suppose there's a sand mining come up, and pull him long half now, but this like two by go. Now me been concerned because let's say and what's on. Next time we'll rouse him go, or something trip.
The project has the backing of several local level government councillors who met with company representatives earlier. But Councillor Adolf Lilai from Karkum village disagreed with his colleagues, saying he doesn't fully understand the impacts of the project.
Ground stabet mi plan no work anteles dal ground. Why ban blalulo dis la liglik case resource na rausin kopinis na. Bablak si weekend.
One something disturbing straight lo mi all to call back kisim 100 meters start lo solwara Brooklyn lo nambis na go outside. Suppose this la 100 meters all to lem lo start lo solwara brook na go outside minimum all reef blom pla. Mi got big plus sands lo all by rausimol. Na reef house blol fish. Na fish this la all papa nol brata sa kisim kam now. Mi pla mama all susa mi pla sa salim lo market make him lik money lo buy him kai lo buy him school fee this la kain.
Sand mining would mean the removal of more than 10 villages along a 50-kilometer stretch of coastline already suffering from the impacts of climate change. Up the road at Tokain village, the community leaders who disagreed with the project say they're already seeing the social impacts of the project.
Lo community blomipla, lo family blomipla, me look mika division stop. Sampla oliga ting lo money. Na mipla sampla mipla tingim good pla blong behind time. Na desa ting em start lo fight lo mipla now. And big place lo mipla. Lo family blomi yet me look mika division em stop.
In Leh, we sought clarification from the Mineral Resources Authority's managing director if Papua New Guinea does have specific laws on sand mining.
We also have the chromite bit sand deposit down at Lababia. There is also magnetite or black sand deposits along the Amazon Bay in central province and stretches right across to Milne Bay. But there are no clear laws governing the development of the bit sand deposit. However, we have been applying a basic law governing the alluvial mining sector, and in fact in this country the only metal that has been mined under the alluvial mining activity is really gold and silver.
Many of the communities don't know and don't care about the legal complexities of sand mining. But what they do know is that sand from their beaches will be taken if this project goes ahead, and that their environment will be destroyed and their villages removed.
Bougainvilleans elected a new president in September this year, following last year's referendum in which majority voted for independence. Ismail Torama, the former commander of the Bougainville Revolutionary Army, polled more than 51,000 votes, passing the absolute majority. His priority since taking office is to deliver on the aspirations of the Bougainville people, and that means more consultations with the national government. We'll look back at the inauguration of the fourth president of the autonomous region.
This week, Bougainville the main agenda, as the former Bougainville Revolution Army commander was sworn into the House of Representatives as president. The diplomatic corps, including China, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, India and Indonesia, in Buka to witness the president swearing in. During and after the crisis, the international community playing key roles. While Australia trained PNG troops, the New Zealand led the Peace Corps. Going forward for Bougainville, President Torama is setting the past aside and welcoming all.
The international community, especially Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Solomon Islands, Fiji, Vanuatu, and the United Nations have been a tremendous value to Bougainville in pacifying the conflict as in helping to rebuild Bougainville. Under my leadership, Bougainville will continue to work with you so that we reach new heights in areas of mutual interest. The door will be open to any members of the international community in general that is interested in helping Bougainville take its place in the international arena.
But there will be no closer partner than PNG in the Solomon Islands. President Torama stating that during his inaugural speech.
The PNG government, Mr. Speaker, to the PNG government, you have caused us immense pain and suffering, but you have helped us in restoring our lives. You are helping us to rebuild our government systems and institutions. We have reconciled, buried our differences as true Melanesian people. However, a lot more needs to be done in helping our Bougainville people in life to make their lives comfortable.
For the Solomons, they lost their own also during the crisis and after, when restrictions were put in place, cutting off Bougainville from the rest of the world.
Speaker, the government and the people of Solomon Islands deserve a special mention. You have said our times of need, and you have suffered in this course of it. But most importantly, you were the launching pad for peace process, and I, as the new president of Bougainville, accord you my sincere appreciation and look forward to a continued and renewed relationship.
Veteran journalist John Higgins, who covered the crisis and peace process, seeing Bougainville closely attached with PNG even after independence.
But we never left Australia. We're still linked to them in whatever. They began by, supporting us with budgetary aid, then tide aid, and then whatever aid and whatever assistance they could give. Should Bougainville become independent, they might try to go to Japan, they might try to go to the Solomon Islands, they might try and link up to New Zealand and Australia even, but they will still feel obligated to Papua New Guinea, and we likewise will feel obliged to reciprocate that as well. So that link will always be there, and I think whether Bougainville becomes independent or not, we will always have that link. It will always be there, because right now Bougainvilleans are married into Papua New Guinea and vice versa and likewise. So that is not likely to be watered down as two separate countries, no way. But in terms of resource and as a country developing and going forward, it will want to look at other countries to see if they can get a better deal, if the arrangement can be better worked out than between us and them, that kind of thing.
Prime Minister James Marabe, who had brought the diplomatic corps along with him as part of his delegation to Buka this week, welcoming them to set up missions in Bougainville. His welcome coming along with the announcement that the PNG government would hand over diplomatic powers to ABG to allow them to engage with whichever country they see fit to partner with.
We will also assist and we will not stand in the way of our foreign missions who operate in Port Moresby to have the development officers in Buka so that they too, if they want to assist, they could be welcome to assist in the restoration effort in Bougainville. Is that okay? You like in this law, you less. So me talking about finish now. Look, somewhere, but I'm go back tidy. Now all two, like office blow, Los Martin, Australia stop finish, New Zealand stop finish. Some like some stop more, can come, or can help, long walk, or help him. You mean reconstruction, or rebuild him. This blah, thinking blame me, or make him Bougainville ready now, long go on next phase of Bougainville's life.
The diplomatic corps there to begin relations with Torama as the talks begin on the way forward to independence. As it is now, no longer a doubt of if Arab will be a new country, but the question is when.
It's not autonomous Bougainville government anymore. It should be Bougainville independence transitional government, some sort of a name that should have been, because we've entered the post period. That is why my concern was into the post period plus the monies that they should give, the drawdown of powers with the drawdown. I mean, economically, people of Bougainville can meaningfully participate into growing our own economy.
Towards them delivering in terms of the economic potentials, harvesting from that, restructuring the public service, transplanting law and justice sector back into the island, and make all these little things that will make the island come back to life before we venture into even discussing on the independence issues.
Since Tuesday this week, it has come clear on some of the agendas for the JSB. Bougainville Copper Mine Limited shares transfers, fiscal powers, outstanding restoration grants, public service powers, and the most important, when the region will be politically independent and break away from mainland PNG.
And two hands to work with you and to hear from you. And some commitments I made, I look forward to the first JSB after this fourth parliament is stitched together and President Torama, your first cabinet is installed. I look forward to the first JSB we will sit to plan out what is the next phase of life after referendum, life after swearing in of the first government after referendum, and how we should work into the future so that we take our people with us and not leaving them behind.
So we'll prepare ourselves. Instead of just going rushing towards and then meeting, but we'll prepare. As soon as we prepare, we have this consultation with Prime Minister and yes.
But what's also new in the public arena but has been lingering whenever the topic of Bougainville is brought up is that the Panguna mine, the center of the crisis that led to the loss of 20,000 Bougainvillean lives and PNG soldiers, may be reopened to assist the autonomous region become economically independent. Torama stating the people will decide if that was to take place.
Under my government, we will have significant target plan for growing our economy. Panguna mine will be a key target, but we will not put all our eggs in one basket. My government has a number of specific large to medium projects, ideas in mining, agriculture, fisheries and tourism that will create employment and generate revenue for Bougainville. Timing on when our people is ready and timing to economically recover Bougainville. We got a lot of issues, agendas to be fulfilled first before the actual timing in its place. But the real time to economically recover Bougainville is now, not tomorrow.
The Aurora member and Minister for Education, Theonel Lamotbob, stating before Panguna mine should be opened, other aspects of life in Bougainville and its constituents around the copper mine should be considered.
Talk about the real roots of the mining issue, because there are stakeholders, and these stakeholders are well informed and they know what should be done and what is the rightful thing in order so that social justice can really be felt, be sensed by the people. So in that way, people can be relieved in preparation for a new nation. Because, I mean, we can be given the shares. Yes, they can be given down to ABG. But when the communities are not settled, how is harmony going to be guaranteed and that economic prosperity will be ensured?
Meanwhile, Prime Minister James Marabe also stating he himself faced issues with the Bougainvilleans in Port Moresby on the issue of Panguna. The Prime Minister now stating the decision was in their hands on what they wanted to do.
Na misa talking about let me know work for me. You go back to government bill of Bougainville. Government bill of Bougainville, but deal with the resource of Bougainville. You know, government must be but deal with the resource of Bougainville. So me like talk sawe long all some brother me. Whether all one school or all senior long, you mean long time independent coming up now, you stop well or help him solve him like crisis for Bougainville. Now something lo Panguna go back now you're not gonna ask me lo keep him back long what must we stop and me him go back long people here lo come.
President Tarama confident and ready to build a nation of its own.
Mr. Speaker, to the people of Bougainville, we have finally given an unshakable number to the long-haired dream of our forefathers, our leaders who have gone before us. We owe it. We owe it to Sir Paul Lapun, Sir Donatus Mola, Dr. Alexis Sare, Anthony Anogu, Joseph Kabui, Francis Ona, Leo Hanat, Moses Haveni, and many others who at different times of our history added to the foundations of our journey. My government will need your continued support and patience as we work the journey of securing Bougainville's sovereignty.
The United States of America also went to the polls to elect a new president. Democratic candidate Joe Biden was elected 46th president, a result President Donald Trump refused to accept. He filed lawsuits that have since been unsuccessful for the most powerful job in the world. Months of campaign to fiery debates, early votes, Biden leading the polls and Trump claiming to win way before final results made the U.S. elections 2020 one of the hardest to predict. After Democrat Joe Biden was announced president-elect, Donald Trump has been making unproven allegations of widespread voter fraud, which he says tipped the race for Biden to win.
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
Trump's position in defiance of political norms and traditions sent tremors throughout the nation as public officials and American voters reacted to a situation that, while telegraphed for months in advance, was traveling uncharted terrain. Their calculation was simple. A few Republicans wanted to draw the ire of a man who can unleash the wrath of his base with the flick of a finger on Twitter. So despite the president's electoral defeat, Republicans appeared content to stand aside and let the president insist he won with the legal votes until the seemingly futile legal challenges are resolved and the results certified. With that, Republican politicians have to think about their future, both in working with the incoming Democratic administration and in winning moderates in elections to come. They accept that the president has a right to make his claims, give him time to vent his frustration, but figure that there will be no evidence of sufficient magnitude to change the election results. Through their actions, they're acknowledging that come January 20, there will be a new president, and Trump too shall pass.
Folks, I'm a proud Democrat, but I will govern as an American president.
The National Executive Council went ahead in November and approved 10.2 million kina for COVID-19 research, despite huge negative reaction from the public. A group of local scientists and researchers formed the New Guinea Biomed Company and were determined to start clinical trials for the possible COVID-19 cure. Prime Minister James Marabe supported the project, saying he will not kill research and ingenuity.
These are some of the shareholders of the newly created New Guinea Biomed Limited. Most of them are academics from the University of Papua New Guinea. Dr. Arnold Weiner is a surgeon and lectures at the UPNG School of Medicine and Health Sciences, and Dr. Christopher Kinepi is a physician and the head of UPNG Health Services. The others specialize in chemistry, while Dr. Bomai Keringa is a structural and molecular biologist. Like scientists throughout the world, they also put their knowledge to use in trying to understand the COVID-19 molecular structure and how to combat it.
As a citizen of this nation, we must also involve in the fight against this common but unseen enemy. And that's exactly what my team and I have been doing for the past 6 months.
It's nothing new, they explained. They just had to cross-check and mix existing drugs to find a blend that works. It was all computer work and nothing to do with laboratory testings.
What we did, we opened the structure of the COVID-19. So what we did was actually send those drugs to actually arrest the COVID-19. With that, we have actually, based on all this exhaustive and rigorous screening process, we have zoomed down or trimmed down to actually 10 drugs. And these are the top 10 hits around the world. And from the 10, we call in our medical doctors to actually come up with a combination that we could repurpose for the treatment of COVID-19.
They have discovered something which they are positive could be a cure for COVID-19. They say it's an 85% discovery and ready for clinical trial. Discovering something new is the sole reason they had to register their company to protect their intellectual right. They say it's nothing to do with politics.
We feel that we have to secure our intellectual property. And that is the reason why we have to come up with a company. And we formed this New Guinea Biomed Limited.
Since initiating the research, the team has spent about 50,000 kina of their own funds. They say they have approached concerned authorities like the Institute of Medical Research, but nothing positive has come out from their meeting. So they decided to work by themselves, and after numerous presentations to the government and concerned authorities, the Prime Minister got on board. The 10.2 million kina, they say, is to purchase a gene sequencing machine.
In announcing the NEC decision, Marabe in the statement said the money will be made available to assist in COVID-19 drug research, procurement of sample drugs, and development of research laboratories, plus trial of drugs if approved by the Health Department. He said the release of this statement now completes the entire process in as far as him signing the NEC decision. Again, he maintained his stand that this pursuit to research COVID-19 drugs was a genuine one by local scientists, and he will continue to support Papua New Guineans through a state-sanctioned process. He said the company, New Guinea Biomed's name, had to be mentioned in the NEC paper and decision because they felt their intellectual properties needed to be secured. Marabe further stated that the fund envelope approved is not for the company, but the program that will be properly supervised by relevant state authorities. He adds this decision will not give away a check of 10.2 million kina to the researching firm, but for the entire work to start, and that will involve collaboration between the Health Department, UPNG, PNG IMR, and others. And if the medical and scientific community through peer review gives okay, he says the next phase of work will proceed, and that will involve drugs procurement, laboratory mix, and trial, among others. Marabe says all doctors and scientists should take this as an opportunity to pull together to look into this area of science and research as a pursuit of economic value too. He adds the country has been hosting conferences and symposiums for 45 years. It is now time to move into the next phase for actual discoveries of cure. The Prime Minister believes PNG has enough intellectual capacity in the country for such a pursuit, and it may not be just for COVID-19, but any other human and animal medicines or plant pesticides into the future. Meantime, of the 10.2 million kina, bulk of the fund will be channeled towards rebuilding of science faculty laboratories in UPNG for this work and future research.
Attempts to oust James Marabe as Prime Minister was fueled towards the end of the year. The rebellious actions of senior members of Parliament and ministers in the November sitting forced both sides of the House into two camps. The opposition opted to form a new government in Vanimo, while government MPs camped out at Loloata.
The Honourable Member for Middle Ramo.
In a move that caught the government by surprise, the opposition garnered more than enough support to temporarily block the 2021 budget and adjourn Parliament for a month. Like any vote of no confidence and formation of government, the numbers remain fluid, with each side claiming a majority. While the separation of powers between the three arms of government was being tested, it was left to the Supreme Court to interpret the members' actions on the floor. The court ruled that the recalling of Parliament in November was unconstitutional and ordered Parliament to reconvene on the 14th of December. However, in another twist on the day, while the House attempted to consolidate numbers, arguments surfaced on the legitimacy of member for Kerawagi, Barry Palmer, as a member of Parliament.
It is my intention to refer this matter to the appropriate authority, whether it is the Supreme Court or National Court, for adjudication. I cannot be seen to be usurping the power of the judiciary to make an unilateral decision on the status of the honourable member for Kerawagi.
There is a latest court order that has been served on your clerk, and I believe your clerk has served on you, annulling the insolvency of the Honourable Barry Palmer, the member for Kerawagi. That order. And Mr. Speaker, I seek leave of the Parliament to tender. I seek leave of the Parliament to tender these court orders.
Mr. Speaker, Section 155 of the Constitution says no process issued by any court in the exercise of its civil jurisdiction shall be served or executed through the Speaker. This law paper you got, you know, a meeting no time you will sit. Mr. Speaker, I also point the order against the proposition for the opposition to call for a vote, because we have a stranger in the House. We cannot vote.
This time work below you, you need to seek legal advice. You don't have to come and lecture member of Parliament. Right. You got court decision, you seek him legal advice. You've got sufficient counsels in Parliament, or you can outsource that for them to advise you. You don't need you come. You don't need you come now. You confuse in Parliament. Right. Please.
Thank you.
And after 4 weeks of political infighting, it was over. 18 members of the opposition moved back to support Prime Minister James Marabe, brushing aside any moves to oust him for the top job.
Voters have their say in 2022. Once you elect a member into Parliament, then that member now, based on his conscience, conducts himself on the floor of Parliament, or conducts himself in the office of being a member of Parliament. So they have their choices. We can't lock up their choice. We can't lock up their freedom. That's what Section 50 of our Constitution entails. I am privileged and blessed to have Sir John Pundari and the team that has come back to us. I'm really blessed to have the Honourable Sam Basil and his team that has come back to us. I'm truly blessed to have the Pangus who left us. Their names hasn't been scraped off the Pangu rolls.
I'm not ashamed to stand here to talk and tell you that this is part of our democratic process.
This process sometimes happens to tell the Prime Minister of any nation that operates under the same law and the system, to tell him that, look, sometimes we don't agree on these things, but we have to agree, you have to listen to us. And I'm happy that the Prime Minister is happy, is listening to those. We've wasted, I say sorry to the group and all the groups, Papua New Guinea, that we've wasted 4 weeks of Papua New Guinea time, we've wasted 4 weeks.
This, I must say, that it's a learning curve for all of us. Yes, we have had votes of no confidences in the past. But this one, I have experienced a Prime Minister who was different in that he was willing to admit mistakes if there was any.
2 days later, 9 new ministers were sworn in at the Government House, including Sam Basil, who returned as the Deputy Prime Minister.
Politics can be played, but with due consideration to the welfare and stability this country needs. And today, let me appreciate the Honourable Sam Basil and the 17 other members of Parliament who, after the 4 weeks of contest, they finally appreciated what was at stake. What was at stake was reform agenda or remaining at the status quo that has held us back in the last 45 years. The reform agenda we were mooting is not a James Marabe agenda. It's an agenda that belongs to correct thinking Papua New Guineans who want to make a change for the better in our country.
And I say thank you, and that we will now be partners, and we will now be partners with the government and the coalition in government to support Prime Minister all the way to 2022 to implement the policies. And then we're looking forward for the major announcement on Sunday of how Prime Minister will structure our policies going towards 2022.
And while stability was somehow restored in PNG politics and Prime Minister James Marape pursuing reforms in the public sector, the country received news on the passing of member for Moresby Northwest Sir Makera Marauta. He passed away on Saturday, December 19th in Brisbane after a long illness. A memorial service was held for former Prime Minister at St. Mary's Anglican Church at Kangaroo Point in Brisbane on December 23rd. The service was attended by family, friends and colleagues in Brisbane and live streamed on Facebook for those outside of Brisbane to witness. A tribute and traditional ceremony was accorded by the Gulf community in Brisbane. Government ministers Justin Tichenko and Soro Eoe have been tasked to liaise with the family of Sir Makera Marauta for a state funeral in the coming weeks in Port Moresby. And we'll go for a break now. Kilawani will join you after the break for a roundup of sporting events in this COVID-19 pandemic year. Stay with us. You're watching The Year in Review.
It has been a challenging year globally in sports, and the scourge of the COVID-19 pandemic forced a nationwide lockdown on sports in Papua New Guinea. Most competitions had to suspend their competitions indefinitely and soon picked up toward the end of the year. The biggest blow was to the nation's most popular sport, rugby league. The SPPNG Hunters, with a new coach, ended their season prematurely just after round one with suspension of the Intrust Super Cup. But it was the Intercity Rugby League competition that took center stage this year, starting without crowds and later on finishing the season on a high. In football, the National Soccer League was also played within the confines of COVID-19 restrictions, but finished off on a high as well.
It's the last day of 2020 with a challenging year in sports, COVID-19 at the center stage of most disruptions to the sporting calendar. The year started off with excitement for rugby league fans with the first National Rugby League trial match on Papua New Guinea shores. The Cronulla Sutherland Sharks and the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs arrived in Port Moresby for their trial match in February to a host of fanfare. The trial match was part of the Pacific Step Up Through Sport package announced at APEC 2018, the Australian government supporting annual pre-season trial matches between Telstra Premiership NRL teams in the Pacific, starting with Papua New Guinea in 2020. The Bulldogs came out victors 30 points to 18 at the Oil Search National Football Stadium. For football fans, it was the OFC Champions League group stage also in the month of February, where the host Hekari United were in action in Group A of the tournament, giving fans of football a great chance to watch teams from Oceania battle it out for a chance to qualify for the FIFA Club World Cup. But sadly, Hekari finished third with a win, a draw and a loss, missing out on the next stage. For the SPPNG Hunters, it was looking good for the team with a new coach and also a chance for the team to bounce back from a poor season in 2019. The team launched its season in February with the season to start in March, but plans didn't work out with the team ending their season after just the first round. The COVID-19 pandemic in Australia forcing the suspension of the Intra-Super Cup season. In March, the national women's rugby union team, the newly renamed Cassowaries, took on the women from the Kingdom of Tonga in a World Cup qualifying repechage tournament. Unfortunately, the PNG women went down fighting against a bigger, more dominant Tongan women's side, going down 36 points to 24. By the month of March this year, the COVID-19 pandemic had forced sports into lockdown across the globe, with PNG also cancelling sporting activities. The National Soccer League, the only competition in play, was forced into lockdown amongst other sports which had March as their season start date. The SP Sports Awards also cancelled for the year 2020, with sponsors SP Brewery pulling the plug on the annual awards night. With venues shut down, they played a crucial role in supporting the efforts of battling COVID-19. The netball courts in Port Moresby at Ritterflynn had been converted into an isolation facility for COVID-19 patients. By the end of March, the Olympics had been cancelled and postponed to 2021. Organized sporting activities had gone into a total lockdown. Sports federations and associations were eager to get back to their competitions, forcing the PNG Sports Foundation in May to issue the Back to Sports Protocol, spearheaded by then-director of the PNG Sports Foundation, Peter Siamalili Jr. This gave the protocols to federations and associations to return to competition under the COVID-19 pandemic. In May, after the lifting of the lockdown by the pandemic controller, competitions returned, with volleyball, cricket and rugby union among other sports returning to competition. But that was short-lived after another lockdown came into place in Port Moresby after cases of COVID-19 in the city rose. Fast forward to June, and Papua New Guinea Rugby Football League chairman Sandy Saka was re-elected for another term as chairman. After consultations with Sports Foundation and the pandemic controller, the Digicel Cup season was launched on 25th June, giving the opportunity for the competition to provide match time for most of the SPPNG Hunters players in the country. In August, after 4 months on the sideline, the Kumul Petroleum National Soccer League competition commenced their 2019-2020 season with much anticipation, but was without fans, before the lifting of the competition allowed for spectators to come back. Things looked bright for the sporting community, and with the Sports Foundation granting the OK to sporting federations, most competitions resumed, but in a shortened season. September saw local competitions in Port Moresby come back, with the Port Moresby Rugby Football League and the Capital Rugby Union commencing their 2020 seasons. With the easing of the lockdown restrictions for sporting venues and travel restrictions also lifted, the two semi-professional competitions in football and rugby league finished off the season on a high. Other sporting competitions also managed to end their season well. The month of December saw the PNG Air National Athletics Track and Field Championships, ending the year on a high for the athletes. 2020 will always be remembered as one of the most challenging years in sports and has taught a lot of federations and associations many lessons to learn from. With the pandemic still a major concern worldwide, the sporting fraternity in Papua New Guinea will be more prepared heading into the future.
Papua New Guinea's men's national cricket team, the Barramundis, in 2019 made a historical entrance onto the T20 International World Cup after making it through the qualifiers in Dubai. Unfortunately, the dream of playing against the best in the world didn't come to fruition this year due to the pandemic. Sports in 2020 has been an emotional roller coaster of strange, sad, inspiring and jubilant, engulfed within a pandemic that caused a months-long shutdown of sports across the country and the entire world. For Cricket PNG, it sure has lengthened the journey to playing with and against the best of the world in the game of cricket. Since affiliating to the International Cricket Council in 1973, Papua New Guinea have never been this close to partaking at the table of the giants in the code, particularly in T20 cricket. While the lowest, PNG's national women's team came close last year, the men's national team, nicknamed Barramundis, got through the qualifiers after years and years of trying, and are now T20 World Cup bound, a dream come true for cricket fraternity and Papua New Guinea.
This has been a dream for so many cricketers before us and for generations. We've always watched the World Cup on TV and to actually qualify for one would be a really good boost for us.
The strengths have been the batting. The batting has been really good for the last 18 months, especially we have played a lot of T20 cricket. We've won most of the games.
The team has stuck together for a couple of years, so I think everyone's really gelled and bonded really well together.
The greatest strength is they all come from one little village basically, so they are like brothers. They really do look after each other well.
Because everyone is based in Port Moresby, we all train together every day and probably on the weekends we see each other every weekend with club cricket, so I think that's what makes a difference.
The pinnacle would be getting to the World Cup with my teammates. You know, we work really hard.
To finally get over that hurdle, get that monkey off their back would be fantastic, and it's something that we've been talking about and working for 18 months to achieve.
I think that would mean the world to everyone, especially trying to grow the sport of cricket in PNG.
Could definitely push that hunger to play cricket for your country. It'll just show people that you can actually make a life out of playing cricket professionally.
But this year, the dream of playing in the World Cup stage is being delayed another year due to the global COVID-19 pandemic. A sigh of relief for the sporting world and Barramundis when the restrictions started easing, and the players were on the pitch again after getting clearance from the country's pandemic controller for the start of domestic competitions. All international fixtures and lineups were either cancelled or moved forward. Cricket Papua New Guinea hosted domestic competitions in the Isuzu National Cup, the Curtin Brothers T20 Smash. With the T20 World Cup moved to India in the new year, the dream of playing alongside and against the world's best for the Barramundis is yet to be realized.
And that's how we end our program on the last day of 2020, this New Year's Eve.
The news team will be back tomorrow to welcome a brand new year 2021. Happy New Year.
Yes, our hardworking news team will continue the job tomorrow to bring you the latest happenings around the country. We'll leave you now with some of those moments captured while out on duty. Happy New Year.
Oi, siete está por ahí?
Is my teeth okay? Is my cold okay?
You look at chef, me number, and if it doesn't look right, you have to tell me to change it.
You can look him. Blouse blooming los la side.
The call by the PNG Health. The call by the PNG Health Support Workers Association, along with its plans to close doors to the calls by the PNG Health Workers
The Asian Development Bank approved an 87 million kina investment in Greenfield 4G network. In 2019, ATH announced that it has struck a deal to acquire 70% of shareholding in Digital Group. In 2019, ATH announced that it has struck a deal to acquire 70% of shareholding in Digital Group operating in PNG, Singapore and Australia. Just last month, the Asian Development Bank invested 87 million kina to finance a Greenfield 4G mobile telecommunications network in PNG. Shamin Poreambeb, National EMTV News.
The Directorate for Social Change and Mental Health Services was created on the legal basis of the Mental Health Act 2015. The act ensures that the Laloki Psychiatric Hospital has a board with the
when they were attacked by a group of people. Involving a duo from Hela province. It was believed the men were
So let me just confirm second line, Pastor. Just one more for safety. And insurance becomes crucially important. Denny Sorare, National EMTV News.
Despite COVID-19 affecting learning for many students around the country, more than 73
that will allow Bougainville's particular powers that will ensure the
Prime Minister James Marabe announced yesterday that his government will show more
The Tufi Tapa and Tattoo Cultural Festival had initially started in 2006, was launched.
The act ensures that the Laloki Psychiatric Hospital.
The government was able to pass successfully the 2020 pass again.
to ensure there is public private partnership.
I'm in up here. Go down, Lily. Meantime, Clerk of Parliament Kala.
It is a place. Sorry, take three.
All police make him walk by him out blong all yet. Long how this die.
And I'm Kilawani. Join us this tonight. Join us tonight. Sorry, guys.
Hello, I'm Helen Sia.
And I'm... Sorry, it's...
I didn't finish laughing yet.